All right, testing, testing. Welcome in, everybody. I'm just getting the link share with my community here, and then we're going to get started. So, share the link, guys. Invite your friends in, and this is going to be a hell of an episode to watch. I appreciate everyone hanging out here tonight. Let me just put the link in the community for my Discord. I just like to give a minute for people to get in, and I like to start the podcast tonight by saying, thanks for your patience, guys. I was traveling a lot last weekend, having some difficulties with my family. My father's been sick for a while, pretty bad. My mother hasn't been well either. And so I'm the only person that has the capacity to fly out and take care of them right now. And so I had to spend some time last weekend just making sure my family was doing all right. Sometimes the commitments in life that are personal and close to you matter more than anything you're working on in business. That didn't mean the mission didn't stop. I kept working over the weekend when I had time. I pushed some new updates for the site. Vision AI is now better than ever. And one day at a time, we are taking over the world. So thank you guys for understanding my situation. My family's doing okay for now. It's not great. I'm probably going to have to go out there soon to give them more attention as my father heals, as my mother heals as well. And we'll be back as possible. So welcome in. Welcome into the Ascended Podcast. If you guys don't know who I am, I'd love to get to know you, especially in our community at alturasociety.com. That's the big call to action I'll reference multiple times tonight. Join the community, Altura, Altura, society.com. Join our Discord, our free chat where we're hanging out, where we're discussing opportunities, and we're already building what will be a $1 billion market cap movement as we launch and finish our token sales, putting our memberships out there, getting our cryptocurrency put together and ICO'd. It's going to be exciting, and I appreciate all of you for being here on this journey, especially as I battle my own personal struggles and share some of the insights along the way. Episode 24. This is an important one, and I think we already technically did episode 24, but I want to redo it in a sense where this could either be a part two, but understanding the thought process behind entrepreneurs and why these startups happen. So maybe this is part two of episode 24. Maybe this is episode 25, however you're seeing this, depending on the platform. But let's start out with an exercise. Picture this. Even close your eyes while you're watching this, if you have a minute. You're standing at the edge of a vast fog-shrouded arena, like the Colosseum, where you can't see. And the greatest battles in here aren't fought with weapons, but with the raw machinery of the mind. There's threat, there's danger, and you don't know where it is, but you're here and you have to be prepared to fight. Leaders enter this Colosseum every day. Entrepreneurs, CEOs, visionaries, armed only with their cognitive wiring, their perceptual filters that bend reality to their will or completely shatter it under pressure, depending on not many of the external factors, actually, but the internal process that you call the way your mind works, and what most people call your personality. What if I told you that true war is internal, and 90+% of the time, if you win the internal battle, you will win the external? That you actually have that much control over your surroundings. Now, you've heard the anecdotes, right? Mind over matter, things like that. But your mind actually directly controls the outcome, whether you choose to even participate in the first place, how long you're willing to stay in the fight, what your mindset is, how good of an attitude you have towards solving problems. This all depends on the personality type. And that's why this lesson, this podcast today, is one of the most important episodes you'll ever watch. Now, if you haven't taken the Myers-Briggs test, one of the most famous personality tests ever, right? We're going to explain what that is today. And I would hope that at some point you know what your personality type is. It's a series of 4 letters, and we'll go through those. But depending on how you're wired, the problem will be solved differently. We're going to strip away the illusions. I want to dissect Myers Briggs as they manifest in the brutal theater that we call business, the war of money and systems. Diplomats as subtle architects of influence, sentinels as unyielding enforcers of order, and explorers as impulsive hunters of opportunity. These are some of the personality labels that we give to some of these letter combinations. We're going to peer directly into their thought process. How do these people actually function? And what is the pro and con of their cognitive wiring that defines whether or not their business will be successful? Understand how you think, understand the way your mind is wired, or pick out the things that are true for your personality, and understand your limitations. Because when you overcome those, success becomes inevitable. As an ENTJ myself, which means extroverted, N is, I believe it's knowing, right? Over feeling. T is thinking, and then J is judgmental. I will lay bare my own mechanisms when the time comes and include a recent revelation from an IQ test that I took the other day. I actually posted about it on my social media. That was the lower score that I got. But I learned that when I took an IQ test a few days ago and then again yesterday, I scored a crazy high score. I got a 142. You saw me post like a 124. That was after I was actually having a few drinks at a bar and taking it while I was waiting for my flight. But I got a 142, which puts me in the top 1% of people in my age group. So I'll tell you guys, from the absolute top of the pyramid, I understand what it's like to overthink because that's what I do all the time. I felt like a crown at first, right? Getting a high IQ score. I know we're talking about emotional intelligence and personality types, but let's talk about IQ, which is the main way we measure our brains. It felt like a gift, right? This hyper analysis, the ability to challenge every belief, unearth deeper meaning in chaos, to be able to see the world in a way most people couldn't. It's like a superpower, right? And it kind of is in a lot of ways. But everything comes with a downside, and it's been a double-edged blade my whole life. Being able to think so deeply compared to most people, I run into issues. I spend my days dissecting patterns, sitting on podcasts like this that other people miss, which could be for you if you're not paying attention, but it doesn't make me calm down a lot of times, first of all. It makes me a powerhouse as a business coach, and that's why I've succeeded helping other business owners dissect the way they think about their problems. So if you're looking for the credibility aspect, there it is. I've spotted behavioral blind spots that turn struggling ventures into machines of efficiency. So again, another call to action to join Altura. I will personally work with you on your business while we're still growing. And I'd love to help you guys figure out where your business is unsuccessful. And most of the time, it's not actually a way you have it structured. It's a way you're thinking about making money. High IQ is a gift and a curse. It amplifies your insights while it drowns you or myself personally in complexity. But here's the pivot, and this is where I want to switch gears to something even more potent tonight. IQ alone is a blunt tool. It's simply a measurement on a grid, and I happen to have a high one that becomes a curse at some times. Understanding personality, though, aside, that's a different ballgame. And that's the scalpel that really tells you who you are. Emotional intelligence, EQ, you've heard the term IQ, but in EQ, how well you can read the room and sense other people's behavior, is a nuclear option in business. If you understand the way a potential collaborator or business partner or investor thinks, you can get in their head. And although it may be seen as manipulative, it may be seen as I don't know, too forward or too analytical, it can actually win you friendship, relationships, and powerful success in business. It lets you read the room, forge alliances, and navigate the human minefield where raw intellect tends to falter. You can't blunt force your way or blunt think your way through a situation. You have to be able to understand how people act. So, enough yapping. I want to take a break real quick and let you guys, first of all, try to remind yourself what your personality type is. So again, let me actually pull it up so I actually don't get the terms wrong. So first of all, the first letter we're going to dissect is I versus E. So introvert versus extrovert. That should be very easy. Do you tend to communicate outward more, or do you tend to be more reserved or quieter and think more often? Now, obviously, it depends on the social environment. If you're in a movie theater, right, you're not going to be extroverted and talking to everybody. But if you're at a party, right, you're probably, most of us would be extroverted. Most of us are extroverted after we drink a little alcohol. But just kind of get the general sense of how willing you are to go out and communicate with others. And that changes over time too. Number two, N or S. So actually, sorry, stands for intuitive versus sensing. So intuitive is energized by people, enjoy a variety of tasks, a quick pace, and are good at multitasking. Somebody that loves the smoke, essentially. You love being thrown into chaos. You do good in chaos. S is sensing. They're a little bit slower, not in a bad way, just they tend to take their time and really get to connect with people on a deeper level. And they like to focus on the facts and the details. They like to say, slow down, let's analyze what we have in front of us and really come to a conclusion. Now, don't get that confused with the next one, which is thinking, T, the third letter. They tend to make decisions using logical analysis. They objectively weigh the pros and cons, and they value honesty, consistency, and fairness. Where again, sensors are people that can break down the situation, and it's more about how they interpret the world. Can you actually get a gut feeling about how people and things act? And thinkers are people that are very good at looking at data and analyzing it. The alternative to T, which is the third letter, is F, which is a feeler. All right, so versus just straight up breaking down information and facts and coming to hard conclusions like a scientist, feelers tend to be sensitive and cooperative, and they decide based on their own personal values. They say, I feel this, I feel that. You'll hear them say the actual statement, I feel, versus I think. That's a good indicator that you're a thinker or a feeler. And then finally, you have J, which is judgers, or P, perceivers. So J, judgers, tend to be organized and prepared. They like to make and stick to plans and are comfortable following most rules. Are they good players or not? J are perceivers. They prefer to keep their vision open, take on more diverse perspectives, and they tend to be a little bit more malleable and feasible and flexible with making plans. Okay, does that make sense? So analyze those, get a good understanding where you are, and let's actually get into this. I want to ground this in the framework's core, dichotomies, and I hope that all four of those categories were clear to you. All right. The first category that I want to analyze is going to be called the analysts. No pun intended. These are the intuitive thinkers. All right. Think about an analyst at a corporation, a Fortune 500 company on Wall Street. They're not usually very, talkative most of the time. They're more analytical. They read facts, they read information. They're a little bit thinking first, right? And they're people who tend to treat the world like a puzzle to crack. They love escape rooms, right? Let's start with the INTJ, which is the architect personality. It's a very popular one. A lot of you guys might be INTJ. This is a complex individual we're going to start with. Their thinking is a silent chess game. They absorb data streams. They look at every single fact. They're kind of like Sherlock Holmes that most people can't see. And they simulate outcomes in their head for hours, sometimes driving themselves utterly crazy. And they discard 99% of the options before acting with very calculated strikes. Think like Napoleon, right? Behaviorally, they're the lone wolf strategists. They avoid small talk, they delegate the small tasks, and they focus laser-like on the end games. They're constantly one step ahead. In one biotech saga, an INTJ's mind mapped regulatory loopholes and tech synergies months ahead, acting by quietly assembling a team of specialists to launch a game-changing drug into the pharmaceutical market. Revenue exploding overnight because of it. They just saw the problem because they looked at the data and drew a conclusion before anyone else could even put two and two together. That's their superpower. So if you're an INTJ or something close to it, a lot of the time you have the ability to see the future. And that is your superpower. The company imploded when key players defected, though, feeling like cogs in a machine. Because a lot of times they don't build strong culture, and that can be the downside. So let's switch perspectives, though. High IQ amplifies this. If you let them see systematic flaws, they can pick up what other people miss. But without emotional intelligence, it isolates them further, proving why personality decoding is the real superpower. You can be really smart, and that means you could just solve problems quicker. But if you can't keep the team together, you're not going to accomplish anything. So if you're INTJ, or if you're something close to it, right, within a letter or two, just understand that you need to pay very close attention to the people on your team, especially if you have an I instead of an E. I want to talk about the next major category or archetype. I call this one the debater. It's ENTP. This is extroverted chaos engine. They think in rapid fire debates, even internally. A lot of times they'll question assumptions, they'll brainstorm alternatives on the fly, and their mind's asking this whirlwind of why not? Why can't I do this? And they're so focused a lot of times on replying before the other person even finishes talking. They're thinking about their response and not actually listening to the other person. This can be a downside because they might not hear all the relevant information and kind of jump the gun. Without personality awareness, though, high IQ just deepens the isolation. And that's a problem, again, that I tend to relate to. Although that's not necessarily my style, and I'll get to my style again. I want to switch up to the ENFJ. So again, feeling, extroverted, intuitive, feeling, and judgmental. This is the protagonist, the hero of every story. They think in relational webs. They map out the group dynamics because they're extroverted and they're also intuitive. They forecast emotional ripple effects and they decide based on collective uplift, right? Feeling. I feel this. I feel that. I'm intuitive. I sense what the group is kind of coming to a conclusion on. And a scaled enterprise, right? They are able to think through the team fractures and they're able to pick it up very quickly. They act by realigning their roles with personal growth paths, surging productivity. They become the hero of the story. I did that a little bit at the beginning of this podcast. I shared an insight about my personal life that I was struggling with to show that I'm on the same team as you. Because I could sense maybe that your focus was diluted. Maybe you had a hard day, it's a Monday. And I need to bring you in to feel like we're fighting the same battle. But a lot of times, the ENFJs overcommit. The hero sacrifices too much, and they think harmony trumps boundaries. This leads to exhaustion. They try to be there too much for everybody, and it wears them thin. Emotional intelligence is their baseline, but dissecting the type prevents codependency. Okay, let's get to the next main one, which is close, ENFP. So the only difference between the protagonist and this one, the campaigner, is that they're perceivers instead of judgers. So they think in bursts, in creative associations. They link unrelated ideas. They're always the person that says, I never thought of this way, right? Because they perceive things differently from everyone else. It's their focus point. They envision possibilities in flashes. They act spontaneously to test vibes. They're typically charismatic brainstorming, and they like to bring people together to solve problems collectively. They like to pivot their campaigns mid-flow. That can be a downside because a lot of times they're so ready to get started, the ENFPs, that they don't give what they're doing enough time to actually manifest in reality. The marketing triumph a lot of times comes out of this. They think through their audience intuitively. And they act a lot of times with viral hooks that capture markets. They understand and they're very good at being able to put themselves in the audience's position and understand the way they're thinking about the world. A lot of times these people do have higher intelligence quotients because they're so good at putting logical connections together. That's the perceiving side of that. But scattered focus means unfinished loops. Personality mastery channels this a lot of times. If they really understand what their downsides are, the campaigner, they can actually become the richest people out there. Well, a lot of times IQ alone amplifies the chaos. So they're very smart, but they're not good at understanding their limitations as an ENFP. They're going to get too chaotic, let's just say, because they're going to be jumping all over between different ventures and not actually commit to anything. All right. I want to take a break here just to kind of recap what we've already talked about. I'm going to go through one sentence and try to give you guys my vibe. So INTJ, introverted, intuitive, thinking, and judgmental. That's the architect. So they think, again, they're absorbing all the data and they're able to master calculate everything. They just don't tell their plans to a lot of people. So it could come off a little bit cold and manipulative. Next, the ENTP is the debater. They're always questioning, they're always challenging. They're the kid in class that's always trying to debate the teacher. And they think of creative solutions because of that. But a lot of times, they never actually act because they're so focused on just challenging topics that they don't actually commit to anything. That brings us to the ENFJ, which is the protagonist, that's so focused on acting and what other people are thinking that sometimes they wear themselves too thin. And again, they can bring everyone together. And when executed correctly and with a conscious mind of their limitations, they can actually lead a company to victory, just like an actual hero. And ENFP, they tend to love brainstorming and creative direction, right? They're constantly thinking of new marketing campaigns, new ideas, but they can get very scattered focused because they're so focused on trying to over analyze and overthink things that they don't necessarily act when they should. Okay, so that's the main summary of what we've gone over now. I'm going to go over the last half of these, and again, there's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, so there's 16 of these. I'm not going to cover all of them now. We can do it at a future episode, but I want you guys to be conscious of maybe where you lie in this. I like this next one a lot. I don't necessarily, it's not me. It's not actually pretty far away from what I am, but I find this personality intriguing because I think it's so much different than my own. I call this one the Sentinel. These are sensing judgers anchored in duty. This is I, which is introverted, S, sensing, T, thinking, and J, judgmental. The logistician. Thinking is linear checklists. They process facts one at a time. They don't like to get thrown a bunch of information chaotically. They like to take things in order, down the list, down the to-do list, whatever it is. They decide on their precedents. They act with meticulous execution, and they will not break their standards for anybody. They're a financial fortress. They think through compliance gaps, and they act by implementing protocols that ensured stability. All right, so they're very good with handling money. They're very good with planning budgets, doing spreadsheets, whatever it is. And they don't compromise very easily. The downside, the rigidity. It blocks their adaptation. Emotional intelligence could be the superpower that actually makes this person a powerhouse because they're very sensing, right? And they're very judgmental. So they know what they're doing, but if they have the ability to communicate with other personality types, they can soften their edges and they can actually really, really understand and help others understand something better than they could before. That'd be a great podcast person if they could overcome the introvertedness, right? Sometimes the camera and not talking to somebody else could help with that. ESTJ, the executive. This is very close to what I am, except I'm an ENTJ, I believe. So I'm more of an intuitive person than a sensor. But again, extroverted, sensing, T, thinking, and J, judgmental. They think in hierarchies. They weigh efficiencies, and they act with authoritative commands. They like to manufacture overhaul. I'll explain what that means in a second. So they think costs versus outputs. They're constantly weighing things, and I do this a lot myself because this is very close to basically what I am. But is the value of doing this worth more than the cost of doing this? And that could be anything, right? They're constantly doing mathematical equations in their head. Taco Bell is 10 minutes away. It would save me 20 minutes from driving to Chipotle. The food's worse though. Chipotle is going to put me in a better mood. It's going to be better for me. I got to drive further though. I got this work to do. That's the math they're doing in their head constantly because they're always weighing outputs. And they actually do communicate that. If they're with other people, they're going to be explaining their thought process. They're the person trip that's very good at saying, well, honestly, we could do that, but this is the problem. And they're breaking down all the options for people. And that tends to be very good because it allows everyone to see the bigger picture clearly. But the demands, right, a lot of times can crush spirits. They sometimes are so efficiency based that they put feelings aside and they're willing to sacrifice some people's emotional side to get what they need to do done. I've done this in relationships. I've had bad romantic and dating relationships in the past because I was so focused on optimizing my time and getting the best value out of what I was doing, that I would literally be on FaceTime in a long distance relationship working on my computer, and it would be so hard to literally just focus on talking to the person. I thought it was ADHD. I think the bigger thing is just my personality type, and I had to overcome that and get better at my limitations. But right, if you add the EQ side of it, you can temper that, and you can really create this environment where you're very clear, very communicative, and it can be one of the best people to work with. Not trying to float my own boat here, but I think I've done a good job at mastering that. ISFJ. I like this one because it's a bit different. Instead of ESTJ, this is ISFJ. So this is the defender. They think empathetically about needs, and they decide on harmony, and they act protectively. They are the mother instinct, right? The healthcare sustain a lot of times, right? So a lot of times they're like nurses, right? Because they're constantly thinking about other people's needs, and they're trying to optimize for what somebody might need in that situation. You're very good at basically putting yourself in other people's shoes without telling them you're doing that. So you can understand where people are coming from. Makes you a more empathetic person naturally. Uh, EQ is really, really high for these types of people. And the only downside could be they could, again, fail to put themselves first at times, and it could be a very overwhelming burden. So when they bend, they break instantly, and pressure can ramp up very quickly. All right, one of the final ones we're going to talk about is ISTP. I call this one the virtuoso. So again, introverted, sensing, thinking, and perceiving. They think tactically. They dissect problems hands-on, and they act independently. So again, they think tactically. They're very like, this equals this. I need to do this and then that. This has to get done before this. They dissect problems very hands-on. They're like, let's just dive into it. Show me what you got. Let's work through it step by step. And they don't like necessarily working with other people. They're more like just, think of like an IT guy necessarily, right? Because they'll be like, this computer isn't working. Just give me the computer. I don't want to talk to you. Let me just explore it, figure out what's going on. They're really good at engineering fixes, but they can get isolated. And so they miss the bigger picture. They fail to get involved as part of the team, but they're very, very good at analyzing situations. These are like computer programmers, engineers, people like that, and they can change society for the better. Well, kind of being out of the spotlight a lot of times. So it kind of makes them their own virtuoso, like I said, or superhero. The final one I want to cover, actually, there's two more. ESTP. I just call this one the entrepreneur. So this is like textbook entrepreneur vibes. Think sensory cues, right? Decide logically on the fly. You get thrown a problem, right? You have that thinking side, right? So you can think through all your options logically and make conscious decisions. You have the S and P side, so you can perceive and sense things. So you understand when things are good and when things are bad. You're extroverted, so you can communicate with your people. You're really good at running teams. This is basically me, guys. And they a lot of times are really good at picking up signals in the market. So the difference is, right, they act with charm, but they can be too impulsive. And I would say a lot of times I could be too impulsive. I've had to learn how to rein myself in from unnecessary risk. And a lot of times, same as any E person, right, they can get too extroverted that they're so focused on communicating that they're not thinking clear enough. But the EST person values thinking naturally too. So it's a rare type of person, which is why it's usually the 1% that has both of those skills. But they're able to be conscious of where their limitations are. And naturally, this person has a higher IQ. ESFP. This is the last one I'm going to cover, I promise. ESFP is the entertainer. They're the person that is the life of the party, right? They're extroverted, they're sensing, they're feeling, and they're perceivers. So everything, right? Everything is related to other people. They're constantly acting extrovertedly, right, with others. They're sensing. They're very good at reading people, being realistic, getting the vibe of what's actually happening. So they can call out feelings on the spot. F, again, feeling. They come up with their own, I feel this way. I feel like this is this. Versus I think, right? I don't think, I feel this way. And then P, perceiving, right? They don't judge. They're not necessarily like going by the rules most of the time. They're willing to kind of open the book a little more and see greater perspective. And so this makes them basically able to talk to anybody. Think emotional vibes, right? Decide on fun. They act relationally. They go media viral because it's just like impossible not to love this person. Their celebrity status. Think audience feels, right? They act creatively. The only thing that undoes this is disarray. Just being not necessarily able to be clear about what you are. Sometimes you get too adaptive and too much trying to be the life of the party that you don't know who you are at the end of the day. I used to be this person a little bit in college just because I wanted to be the center of attention. I think I was a little bit selfish, and I wanted to be liked so bad that I gave up who I was to be liked and to be in the dance circle when I didn't have to be. So that's the summary, guys. I did my best covering a lot of the major paths here. I'm tired of speaking. And yeah, these minds, all of the mindsets and personality types I broke down, they reveal business as a mind game. Think the way you think, which could be your IQ, but most of the time it's how you perceive a situation, which is your personality type. That dictates the way you act, right? So if you're fed the same information, like a car's coming at you, right? Well, somebody who is introverted versus extroverted is going to say, oh my gosh, there's a car coming at me. What should we do? Versus an introvert's just not going to say anything, right? If a car's coming at me, if I'm sensing versus intuitive, I'm going to sensing. I'm just going to be like, okay, well, what is this information telling me? Versus intuitive is going to be like, oh my God, I got to do something now. I got to act. They're kind of like that ADHD mindset. Thinking and feeling, right? If you're thinking about a car coming at you, about to hit you, feeling is going to be like, well, this makes me upset. Versus thinking is like, okay, what are all my options here? What are all the things I can do to get out of this? And you're analyzing the process and way out. And then J and P, right? Judging is going to be like, well, what limitations do I have? Can I cross the street here to get away from it? Are there any laws that say I have to do this? What is inside of my scope and what isn't? And then perceiving is saying, well, I bet in this situation it'd be fine if I just jaywalked, right? So those are the personality types kind of applied in action. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too bad. But obviously, I fed the same information to each personality. A car is going to hit me. The way I respond is going to be slightly pulled to a different outcome based on the way my emotional intelligence is wired. So I could have the highest IQ in the world, but when I pair it with the wrong emotional intelligence and the wrong personality type, I could either be, the hero that solves world hunger, or I could be the psycho killer that hides bodies, depending on the way my genius is applied to work. Okay? So understanding EQ, in my opinion, is the most powerful thing you'll ever do in business. And when you find, especially in business, a personality type that balances yours, especially more of opposites, they attract. And in this case, that's your best bet. Altura, we really, really break this down, guys. As we open our networking hub, I'm going to actually add a personality Myers-Briggs test into the networking hub so you can find the type of person that matches your personality. So again, if you're introverted, you're going to want to find an extrovert to communicate the brand vision and get on camera when you don't want to. If you're sensing, right, if you're really good at understanding, being realistic, looking at the facts, you're going to want somebody that's intuitive, that can kind of come to bigger conclusions, things like that, develop new ideas. If you're thinking and you're very, logical, looking at frameworks, pros and cons, things like that, you're going to want a feeler, somebody that's able to just say, I get the vibe, this is better, let's just go with that to balance you out. And again, if you're a judger, and if you're looking at all the rules and regulations, you're more legal based, you're going to want somebody that's more of a perceiver that says, hey, I get that, but in this case, I think we could stretch it this way. If you balance that out, if you just pick the business partner, guys, that's best for you. Anthony and I balance each other out a lot. I think you'll create a very successful company. You're going to create a vision that's going to change the world. But it all starts from understanding you first. Until you know who you are, how you fit into this grid, nothing's going to change for you. I'd like to program something into Vision AI on alturasociety.com to help you guys do this more efficiently and maybe understand your personality, because it's bigger than just understanding your goals, but understanding how you're actually going to go out and achieve those and how likely you are to get distracted by certain things, how likely you are to want to change the idea for the business itself. Those limitations are going to be what keeps you within the guidelines and determines your success. And I'm inviting you guys to this platform. We're going to open up the networking hub. For right now, you can just join the Discord and start talking with us in the server. I'm literally active right after this live stream. So just go to alturasociety.com and sign up with a free account. Go to the live chat feature and then just hop into our channel, and I'll talk to you right then and there. Earn points through our free points challenge, which if you score points, it's going to be equivalent to a certain amount of tokens you'll get airdropped when we launch our cryptocurrency, which unlocks insane benefit in the community. And obviously, you can use it as a cryptocurrency. And then take the time to invest in yourself is the last thing I'll say. This is a movement, Altura, where we don't just chase hype. We're not an NFT project. We do use NFTs for member verification. So we get the plug of being an NFT space without being an NFT space. But we don't chase wealth. We don't just put ourselves into rooms where hype lasts, right? We engineer success because we create so much value, and we teach you guys how to do that too, where you're just inevitably going to win and be unbreakable. I'd love for you guys to join to turn your business from a whisper into actual reality. And I encourage you to step into the light, understand your limitations, but more importantly, understand how you can change your life with a simple action. Get involved today. I'd love to see you there, and let's ascend together. Until next time, as I say every single time when we wrap up, this is the Ascended Podcast. I'm Caleb Schulke, and I'm rooting for you. Take care.